Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, broadcasting live every Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Central from Panama City Beach, Florida, home of the world's most beautiful beaches. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining me on my weekly broadcast. Every week, I'll feature some of the best instructors, coaches, authors, and entrepreneurs in the golf business today. I begin with a great discussion on Coach's Corner, followed by an insightful interview with my special guest. So let's get started by introducing tonight's Coach's Corner panel. All right. Thank you, everybody, once again for joining me tonight here on Golf Talk Live. Very excited about tonight's shows for a couple of reasons. Always get to start off each week with another round of Coach's Corner with a great panel, and I've certainly got a great one tonight. And then a little bit later on, I'm going to be joined by a special guest. He's actually been on the show before, but it's been a few years, and he's got some new exciting stuff to talk about. I'm talking about Joshua Jacobs. He's the founder and CEO of TGA Premier Sports, which actually covers a variety of different sports, but also golf, and he's got some interesting things happening. And so he's going to be joining me on the second half. And then, of course, we're post-Masters. We're going to talk a little bit about that on the panel here to start things off in just a moment after I introduce the guys, and then we'll get into our regular panel discussion as we continue on. But I just want to thank everybody for joining me. Don't forget, we're live every Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Central right here on blogtalkradio.com network. And at the end of the show, the closing credits, you'll get some other great ways that you can tune into the program as well. So let me introduce tonight's panel, and we'll get into the discussion. But first, I forgot, let me remind everybody, of course, we've got a great sponsor of the Coach's Corner panel, golfswing.com. They're going to be sponsoring this season again, the Coach's Corner panel segment. Very excited to have them. Let me tell you a little bit about them, and then I'll introduce the panel at that point. Golfswing.com, with its cutting-edge technology, have teamed up alongside some of the best instructors, coaches, and swing gurus in the business. Together, they have created one of the best video teaching and training online platforms in golf, period. If you're ready to break 100, 90, 80, or even 70, then join their online video academy and learn from some of the best. Join today, watch, practice, and improve your game. At the end of the show, at the mid-break of the show before my special guest, I'll play a short infomercial clip, if you will, telling you a little bit more about golfswing.com, so make sure you stick around for that. All right, I've got a great panel this evening, as I said, on Coach's Corner. I'm going to introduce the guys. John Hughes, PGA Master Professional, President of the North Florida PGA Section, also was a recipient of the 2013 PGA America's Horton Smith Award, and also a Golf Tips Magazine Top 30 instructor. Also on the panel is Peter Agazarian, PGA and TPI teach professional with the Taconic Golf Club, also owner of Northeast Golf Performance and the 2017 Northeast New York PGA Section Player Development Award recipient. Rounding out the panel, of course, is another John Decker, teacher professional at the New Albany Country Club and also an instructor with golfswing.com. Back in 2015, he was named the Southern Ohio Teacher of the Year. Prior to that, he was the prior head instructor at the Grand Cypress Academy of Golf in Orlando, where he worked under top 100 instructors Fred Griffin and, of course, the late Phil Rogers. He's also an author. His book is called Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game, which has an accompanying Bible study with it, and he's also a great motivational speaker. Guys, welcome to Coach's Corner.
Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Ted.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Ted.
All right, I appreciate it, guys. All right, so we got two Johns on here. So as I was mentioning off air before everybody come on, what I'm going to do just to simplify things, I'm going to start with John Decker, and then Peter Agazarian, and then John Hughes. I'm going to let you bring up the rear, as they say, and we'll keep it in that order just to make it a little simpler for the audience. And I will, for each John, I will say your full name just so that everybody knows which John I'm referring to. So, Mr. Decker, let's start with you. Post-Masters, tell me your thoughts. What did you think of the tournament?
Well, first of all, Ted, thank you for having me on the show, and Peter and John, I look forward to talking golf with you guys this evening. The Masters was incredible. I mean, the ratings, I'm sure were very good. I've not seen the final numbers, But anytime Tiger Woods is even in the mix, we all have to be excited, and he moves the needle, as they say. And what I was most excited about, and what I was really hoping is I was hoping that Tiger and Phil would be kind of in the last few groups, which Phil wasn't in the last few, but he made the cut, and he was kind of there on Sunday. But I wanted to see Tiger go up against the young guns and kind of see what would happen, and because I think playing in a major with Tiger when he's on all cylinders, these guys, a lot of these guys who have been winning the last few years, they have an experience. So it's great for golf. It was exciting, and I'm sure the viewers really enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, very, very interesting. A lot of great things. I only watched in its entirety. I watched the Sunday, of course, part of the Masters. I got little snippets here and there throughout the weekend, but Sunday was sat in my chair and hunkered down and watched the Sunday round. So it was very, very exciting. Peter, something very interesting that I noticed was there seemed to be a little bit of a collapse. Of course, I'm talking about on Sunday on hole number 12 with the final groups. Obviously, Molinari and Woods were together, and Tiger made a very, very smart decision, which goes to his mental prowess. He knew that Molinari was going to be in trouble, hitting it in the water, and Tiger ended up playing safe. What do you think about his decision there? Was that obviously it was a smart move, but he left himself a very long lag putt. What do you think about his mental capacity on Sunday, and particularly at hole number 12 with that decision of hitting it onto the left side, which was, of course, the opposite side of where the pin was placed for Sunday?
I think his poise the whole week was amazing. I was actually there on Wednesday, and it's such a small green. And, I think from what I understand, he made that club choice on 11 green, really, when he saw Koepka hit in front of him. So I think there was he was aware there was a little more wind there, and I think he just has such a deeper understanding of his own game since going through all the stuff that he's gone through, and along with the overall poise that he has and he displayed the entire time. I mean, you can go back to some of the shots he hit earlier that, the punch shot on, I think, what was it, 11 maybe? They're not even 11, on 10 when he hit it in the stuff, and he just punched out into the fairway, and he was fine with making bogey at that point. Came close to making par, but he made a lot of great choices, really, that led to just what ended up happening, what ended up transpiring, which was amazing.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that he
honestly,
really
even that green on 6, and where they had the flag on Sunday on that tabletop, I mean, it's probably the tier there, and the tabletop is probably 6-7 feet high. And whether he intentionally banked it off the collar on the right hand side and got it to, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but there's a certain amount of knowledge that he has about, especially that place, that probably a lot of those guys just don't.
Yeah, and that's an interesting, John. That's an interesting point. I'm talking, of course, about to John Hughes. A very interesting point. A couple of points actually that Peter raised. First off, he mentioned about Tiger's demeanor throughout the whole tournament. He was very, very relaxed. Probably the calmest I've seen him and the most relaxed I've seen him in a very, very long time. Nothing seemed to, even when he made some bad shots or missed some important putts, it didn't seem to be Tiger of old. Where he would get frustrated. It was sort of almost a new Tiger, if you will, or a rejuvenated Tiger. And then also, he's always been a pretty good shot maker, but I think as Peter mentioned, he seemed to really make some very good choices throughout the tournament, and particularly on Sunday. What were your thoughts, John, about the Masters overall and the points that Peter had raised?
I agree with you. I think it's the new Tiger. not necessarily an old. The demeanor he showed throughout the week, I agree with Peter. It's something we haven't seen from him yet. It's not the same face we had seen from Tiger in the past. The really grin and grind it kind of facial expressions were so much different this time, much more accepting of who he is, both as a person and as a golfer. It was obvious. And the choices were less, the word I would probably use is less forced. You didn't see him force any shots. In the past, when he was younger, you would see him pull out a more aggressive club choice or try to make a more forced effort into creating a shot that, would probably challenge him, but at the same time would challenge the field as well. What was interesting was watching him go up 18, knowing he had to make 5, and not necessarily the choices he made so much as the execution. Most people have never seen Tiger purposely make a bogey to win a championship in the past. That to me was really interesting as to how he navigated that. It's outside of his demeanor to perform that way, and I think that was probably the only time you saw him out of his comfort zone. It was the first time you probably saw him think about, wow, how do I win this tournament? It was a fantastic tournament all the way around. Not only for Tiger, but we started seeing whether it's Xander Schauffele or any of the others you're starting to see the new guard and who has the mental capacity to compete at that level consistently. Maldonado comes to mind. Seeing Phil make the cut certainly wasn't a surprise. And in the manner in which he's trying to compete, it shows that everybody who's there still has an eye on the prize and then some. Tiger was fortunate with some mishaps by the rest of the field, but at the same time, he was just so consistent. I agree with everybody on the panel, John included. It is something we haven't seen in a while, but I would call it's something that we haven't seen because it's a new Tiger, not an old.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think to John's point earlier about, maturity, if you will, I think, and Peter had also brought this up about, going up against some of the young guns, if you will. Tiger's 43 now, and, it's certainly not old, but that's a little bit more mature than really what he has been for a while. And what I noticed was there was a calmness about him, particularly certainly throughout the moments that I saw him earlier in the tournament, but particularly on Sunday, he just seemed to be very, very calm and relaxed. And that's something that we haven't seen. And that even though he was not in the lead at that point, he knew he was in contention. He knew that if he just stuck to his game plan, that he was going to have, if not a continued chance at winning the tournament, and he was waiting for his moment, if you will, to move forward. What we didn't see was Tiger of old, John Hughes, as you had mentioned, where he was playing more aggressive, like he has in the past. Picking clubs and that would require him to hit a more aggressive shot. He was much more methodical, almost, I hate to use the analogy, but almost like Nicklaus-like. Nicklaus was not really an overly aggressive player. He was very, very conservative, but he knew when to sort of step on the gas, if you will. But he was very calculated in his, in his shots. And that's what I noticed about Tiger. And obviously, he went on to win his 5th Masters and his 15th major. And it's going to be interesting to see how that propels him for the rest of this season, particularly with the majors. And he's going to be playing, of course, at the U.S. Open. He's going to be at Pebble Beach this year again, which is a favorite of his, and he's won in the past there. So it'll be very interesting to see how he handles that golf course this season. But I was very impressed with it, and I was glad to see him, ultimately win, of course. But more importantly, I was just glad to see him in a good frame of mind and in good contention. and ultimately it paid off for him. But it was a good tournament. I enjoyed it. All right, back to John Decker. We're going to talk about tonight, and sort of in lieu of the Masters tournament, we're going to talk a little bit about the short game. And I'm going to give you some specific things that I want you to talk about, each of you. First off, the first category, if you will, is some of the characteristics of great chipping. Obviously, around some of those fast greens, if you don't happen to hit the green, you've got to be a good chipper. And there's a few things I'm going to mention, and then John, I just want you to explain not so much about the technique, but why you might use this particular technique. And the first one, of course, with chipping is one of the characteristics is choking down on the grip. Another one is sort of a stay open and narrow, if you will, and you want to sort of keep your weight on your forward side and ball a bit back in your stance. So I want you to take those three and just talk a little bit about with the first one, and if you forget one of them, just let me know and I'll remind you. But the first one is choking down. Why choke down? What's the purpose of that? How does it help to increase your likelihood of being a better chipper?
Well, it's important that you choke down on the club because it allows you to get closer to the ball, and it allows the shaft angle to get more vertical, very much like a putter. Chipping is essentially putting with a lofted club. That's the way I like to explain it. So whether I'm using a 6-iron, 7, all the way to my pitching wedge, I'm making more of a putting style motion, up and down, not a lot of follow through, so that I can hit a shot and just barely get it on the green and then let it run to the hole. And obviously it's a very safe shot. Getting the weight forward allows you to have the club bottom out in the same spot every time. One of the worst mistakes that you can make in chipping is to have your weight 50-50, because invariably when you do that, you'll never be consistent with where your club hits the ground. So by setting your weight into your left side, you're going to be very consistent with your contact. And then playing, obviously, when you play the ball back in the stance, and it's important to understand, you don't need to play it way back. I heard Tiger say in a clinic one time, when he plays the ball back in the stance, he moves it one ball. So make sure it's not way, way back. But, narrow stance, like you mentioned, when you have a narrow stance, your weight's on the left side, you're standing closer to the ball, you've got the shaft angle more vertical, you're choking down on the club and making that up and down motion, you're essentially turning your 7-iron into a putter, and the ball is in the air for just a few feet, and then it's running to the hole. So it's a great shot. It's my favorite shot. If I miss the green, that's the shot I want to have. You see it a lot at the Masters as well as the British Open, U.S. Open. It's kind of gone out of style with the rough around the greens and stuff. But it's a great shot, and it's a lost art. You don't see a lot of the young players doing it. They want to tend to flop it. And I always say, why try to hit the hero shot when you can keep it on the ground, especially in crosswinds or high winds. It's a much safer shot to play.
Yeah, and especially with the design of Augusta National with the greens, I mean, obviously the rough is almost non-existent compared to some of the other courses they play throughout the season. And, hitting a flop shot off a really tight lie, which you're going to hit most of the time at Augusta National, is not always going to serve you well, especially for an amateur player. So having a good solid chipping technique is going to help. And the other one that I don't know if you had mentioned or covered or not was obviously staying open, keeping your stance open, and you mentioned narrow on that. Obviously the reason why I'm asking this, and I'm wanting you to be sort of specific about it, is a lot of people, and you made mention of this, John, is a lot of people really don't understand the technique. They see clinics, they see things, but they don't really understand what to do, and more importantly, they don't understand the whys. I think the whys are just as important as the what. So talk about why do we want to have our stance maybe slightly open in most cases?
I think one of the benefits to that is it does allow you to get more weight into your left hip when you do that. And then your shoulders, you don't want to have your shoulders open. You want your shoulders and club face kind of on the target line. But being slightly open, you can be square. I want my students to be a little bit open. Obviously, I don't want them to pull their left foot way back. But I find it to be, from a comfort standpoint, because your hip is kind of a ball and socket joint, it makes it a lot easier to stabilize that weight in the hip. A lot of times people try to put their weight into their front foot, but really put the weight into your hip. Your hips are weight-bearing joints, and that's what, if you put the weight in your left hip, and you're going to be rock solid every time. You're going to hit very nice, crisp shots every time.
Right. Well said. Peter, I'm going to give you some different ones, of course, on this. And again, I understand that there might be variations, and that's fine. All golfers are not the same. But I want you to, again, as John had done, not just so much focus on the technical side of things, but why and what people should be looking for, and you'll understand when I say that. The first one here is obviously keeping your head up, making a good club selection choice. Again, John mentioned the 7-iron, but there are other irons that could be used, and making sort of what they call a single lever swing. What I want you to do, I guess, Peter, in this scenario is talk about, from a player's standpoint, what factors they're going to consider when making club selection, number one, and the actual execution of the shot, what they're looking to do. Obviously, they want to getting it close to the hole, but if they're off maybe a few feet or so off the green, maybe even a couple of yards off the green, I want you to factor those in as well. So just sort of give us an idea based on those three there, what a player should be really thinking about and looking at in order to make some good chips.
Yeah, of course. I really encourage people to embrace, make their choices based off confidence. So no matter what the circumstances, the yardage, I really am encouraging them to have that be the decision maker. If they're unsure of the choice they just made, maybe it's the incorrect one for them. But within that, the conversation is, why is it the confident choice? What's their preference? Are they a person that likes to keep the ball closer to the ground? Or are they a person that likes to put the ball in the air? And in my experience, it's been one or the other, and rarely both. So I really encourage them to embrace that preference that they feel really confident about, and then make their choices from that point. There's people that I've worked with that can be a few feet off the green, but still feel most confident that they're going to get the ball close to the hole with a sand wedge for some reason. Or you have a completely different person with a completely different preference, and they're going to take out a 5-iron and carry the thing maybe a couple feet just so it gets just onto the green. Or you're going to be 20 to 30 yards away from the green and still a lot of green in front of you. And again, you're going to have people that want to put it up in the air. There's going to be people that want to take a 7-8 iron out or a pitching wedge and kind of keep it closer to the ground. So if you allow the person to have control of their choices and have an understanding as to why that's the good choice for them, then you can really empower their short game to be all about, in the end, where the ball is going and just really the practicality of getting it close to the hole, because they're feeling confident about their choice and they embrace their own preference.
Right. And the other one I mentioned was about keeping the head up. And the reason why I say that is a lot of times we'll see that, I'm sure we've all seen many times over the years with some of our students, but for some reason people just feel like they've got to bury their chin into their chest. And obviously that's going to impede the motion of the golf swing, regardless of whether it's a full swing or a chip. And that's something too that do you do anything specific when you're working with students, Peter, that when you see them, and again I realize that every student's different and that, but there are sort of common fundamentals, if you will, that are going to yield success, in other words. And if you start seeing students doing things like digging their chin into their chest and not really getting a lot of momentum or movement through the body, what do you try to do? Do you give them cues, or do you help them create something that reminds them?
Ted, I just ask them if they can see the target.
Right.
And if the answer is no, then there needs to be a different approach. But I've seen people do some interesting things, and it just works. You know,
right.
and if my only thing with stuff like that is that if they can see the target and they have their own unique setup or whatever it might be, I encourage them to embrace it. And I know it's a little outside the box, but anything like that that's actually not important for the player distracts them from what's actually important. So I rather have them have their own unique setup, no matter maybe how far outside the box is, and allow them to keep it simple and have their focus be on what's actually important than adding another thing to the list that isn't important.
Right.
Understand what I'm saying?
Right.
If they can't see the target, they can't, and they're having a hard time, that's different. It's a different conversation. But if they can and they're getting a good result, I generally don't touch it.
Right. Well said. John Hughes, the reason why I wanted to be specific about the conversation tonight is, you know, over the years I've done a lot of thinking, you know, traditional teaching, you know, we've got our sort of set in stone with fundamentals, and Peter raises a very, very valid point. I think one of the mistakes that the industry has made and obviously there are certain things that do have, certain principles that do have to be followed in order to make good solid contact and things like that, but there can be variances on other things. So I want you to talk about, John, the overall chipping, if you will, but I want you to look at it from sort of what Peter just talked about. Are we making it, in some cases, are we making it too regimented and too many, boxes that they've got to check off in order to do everything right? Or can we be more flexible, or do we need to be more flexible? And because I think what's happening is people are getting paralyzed mentally when they're getting over the ball because they're thinking about so many different things. What are your thoughts?
I'm generally asking people very similar to Peter, can you envision the shot? And as you envision it, what do you look like in that envisionment? Are you knocking it down? Are you putting it up in the air? Everybody's got a little bit different take on it. At the end of the day, the more you try to beat science, the more science beats you up. And when we can simplify it down to the core essence for the individual, that makes a whole lot of sense. When it comes to head down or head in the chin or whatever, I try to dispel the myth that you can't keep your head still. It's almost physically impossible. But what's most important? The target. Can you look at the target and make practice swings, and can you feel those swings? It gets them away from the mechanical and more into the feel of what short game really is. The best short game players in the world are more feel-oriented versus technical, but they always start somewhere technically as a standardized basis to make all their variations off of. So from a rigidness, from a technicality standpoint of view, as an industry, I would agree with you. We probably overdo that to a certain extent. I think that comes a lot from the less experienced instructor just trying to go by the book and learn their way around being an instructor, being a good coach. And that's always going to be part of the evolutionary process of the game, and bringing in new people and bringing in new coaches or eventual coaches. But at some point, I think everybody reaches not a satisfaction so much as a comfort level where they've got their basics, whether it's a club choice for a particular lie, or having your stance open or closed, or the ball way back or just barely back, the hand slightly down or maybe midway down, all in a variation based on the situation they're in. And you can't be doing those things until what I call you put a bunch of stuff in the back of the filing cabinet until you've had some experience working it all out. You vary off those standards throughout experience based on what you've had in the past and what you're predicting what's going to happen for the shot in front of you. The real key is not burying someone in an absolute, because sometimes when you say, hey, this is in cement, you got to do it this way, there may be a physical limitation. To both John and Peter's point, there may be a psychological reason why it can't happen. But I think bottom line is, does the situation call for it? All these setup positions allow someone to organically limit or lengthen their swing. Where is the ball? How far is it going to go? What kind of spin is it going to have? Will it release a lot or very little? All those things matter, but it takes time, and that time has to start with a standard that's comfortable for you, that works for you. And then as time marches on, you become more comfortable. You learn your variations. You learn how to feel the shots, not just technically figure them out. And as you learn to feel, that's the time when you start excelling. You start repeating things in a very positive and successful way.
Well said. When you think about it, guys, when I think about instruction, most of the information that we're telling our students is meant to be as a guide. And if you think about this, there's obviously certain fundamentals, but if you look at some great players, as John just talked about, everybody has sort of made modifications or adjustments that suits their game. One that comes to mind, and I'm talking about putting now, is Jack Nicklaus. If you were to isolate his putting posture and his technique compared to what the industry standard would be, he would be way out in left field. He always had a very, very open stance. He was kind of hunched over, his club. But as to Peter's point, he was able to see his target line and where he wanted the bat. He was able to visualize the shot. So whether he was standing on one foot and leaning to the side and so forth, he knew what he needed to do in order to accomplish the task at hand. So I'm going to pose this question to all of you, and just very quickly a thought or two on what you think of this. But the question is this: should we, when we're teaching, the general fundamentals be used primarily as a guide, and should we be focusing more with our students on the results? In other words, what results do you want, and then let's work backwards from that. What do you think? John Decker, we're going to go first, and then Peter.
Wow, that's an interesting question, because it would really, to me, depend on the level of the student. If I have a beginner or someone who's new to the game, obviously getting them into the fundamental, I'm not going to be talking results with them. I might give them some parameters of what a good putt is or a good chip, and how, what a tour player, how close they might get to the hole to give them an idea. But I really don't, with new players, don't spend a lot of time with that. And if I have someone who's a more advanced player, then obviously we're going to get more into goals. We're going to get more into, their results, and give them, here's some of the tour stats, whether it's TrackMan numbers, whether it's stats from, how close they hit it to the hole on 100. A lot of times I'll say, a 100-yard shot, they'll hit it, on average 20 feet from the hole. And so that kind of gives them an idea, an expectation of what a really elite player does. Now, I would never do that with a beginner, because I think that's putting the cart before the horse. But overall, I think it depends on the level of your student.
Yeah, I agree as well. And Peter, same question to you. Are we maybe as an industry at times, and to John Hughes' point, with maybe some of the newer coaches and instructors out there, that maybe they're spending too much time on the technical side of it and not really looking at the results and what the student is most comfortable in doing? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I fully embrace the player as the center, and as long as their style isn't going to inhibit progress, that style remains at all times, no matter what. And I think as an industry, we're very obsessed with aesthetics and the visual of it. Mm-hmm. And at times it can be destructive, don't get me wrong, but also At times that aesthetic is off because there's either a physical limitation or a preferred style that is so deeply ingrained that the player is not going to have the time commitment available to change that motor pattern, or it's completely pointless to try to do that because they're not going to actually play better. So I embrace style and the player's everything, we'll call it, as the center, and you work with that. And if it's something that's not going to stand in the way of progress, you go with it.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, guys. I and John Hughes, I'm coming to you next. I agree. I think as John Decker had mentioned a few moments ago, I think that when you're working with new students, obviously you want to give them a platform to work from. And again, there can be variances or adjustments that they may want to make that are comfortable for them. And there's some basic fundamentals that obviously have been, tried over the years and true and try, if you will. But John Hughes, I look at the history of golf, and I look at, going back 20, 30, more probably 30 years ago, and I look at the variety of golfers compared to today. Today, they all look relatively the same in many cases. They're starting to change a little bit, but it's a very regimented golf swing now. But when I look at guys like Nick Price, I look at Trevino, I look at even Nicholas, and some of the Chichi Rodriguez and some of these other golfers, if you were to categorize them today under the methodology that we're seeing out there, they'd all fail, even though have gotten great results over the careers. But as far as golf swing and isolation, all these key areas and points in the golf swing, they'd all probably fail miserably because they just don't have the aesthetics based on what we're doing today. So what do you think about that as a general thing? Do you think that we have traditionally, I know you touched on it a moment ago, but do you think traditionally golf instruction as a whole is focusing too much and too regimented in the, not so much the fundamentals, but the golf swing itself, breaking it down and into various different points and sort of not forcing, but focusing too much on that as opposed to individual creativity and style? What do you think about that and what I mentioned about some of the older players that we've followed for years and how they seem to manage to win tournament after tournament? What do you think?
We walked a double-edged sword in 2019 as compared to, say, 1979, 40 years ago. The advent of technology, we certainly get a little sterile as far as not necessarily the complexity so much as here are the absolute positions. And then with Flight Scope and TrackMan and all the rest of them, we doubled our game. I can remember John worked for Fred Griffin. Fred was with Dr. Mann for a long time, and we had a model swing, and I had that as a screensaver on my computer for a little bit. It was all based on, hey, here are so many golfers, and it's a compilation of all the perfection of these, and this is what it would look like. And that's sort of what you're talking about when we're watching tour players. That I would call it the swings are more alike and more sterile versus what Peter is saying, more in style. And I think the double-edged sword is not only the technology, it's a fantastic thing, and we have to learn to balance it. But the one item that we as golfers are faced with is that we don't get to practice on the playing field or the court or the ice or the pitch or any other place that all other sports do. So we've had to invent this laboratory, per se, called the practice area or the driving range or whatever the facility may call it. And it's created a wonderful laboratory. I can't think of too many other sports that have this very sterile place where without any consequence you can really learn to hone something. But it's been at the sacrifice of style. It's been at the sacrifice of learning on the job, per se, on the golf course. And that's when you see a Lee Trevino a Miller Barber, Nancy Lopez. Most of these people learned on the golf course. There may not have been a driving range, and if it was, it just wasn't like it is today. Combine that with the technology, we haven't lost style so much as Peter said. I love how he says it's all centered around the player. It was the player's envisionment of themselves, and they as Hogan eloquently said, I got it out of the dirt. I pulled it out of the dirt, kind of thing. It was numerous shots on a practice facility, but it was all based on learning to play the game first, being technically sound second. That paradigm shifted immensely in the 80s and 90s with video and got a booster shot, per se, with ball flight technology. And I think what we're seeing now with PGA Junior League, with some of the other adult leagues that are patterning themselves off of PGA Junior League, we're sort of coming full circle where we're balancing this, where we're allowing people to be themselves and play within the style, the strategy, the mentality that they want to play in, and then sort of putting up those guidelines that you said before and said, here's some things to think about if you want to improve. Here are some parameters that all the best players try to practice in their own style, which make them that as good as they are. And we as coaches, I think the best coaches out there are using that type of method, using that type of philosophy to get the most out of the players when the players are committed. To Peter's point, we have to really understand that the end result is the end result based on how much time commitment the player is putting in there. What can we do as coaches to maximize that? Trying to put up as few fences as possible to prevent them from playing. And sometimes when we get too technical, we don't realize we're putting up those fences. And when you can utilize technology, utilize that laboratory to make it a fun environment, to have people learn to play again, you see sustainable numbers within the industry. You see scores come down. The bottom line, everybody has more fun, including us as coaches.
Yeah, well said. What I wanted to ask, or I guess infuse into the conversation, obviously tonight's discussion was not about chipping. That was how I wanted to start the conversation, and thanks to all of you, we actually led down the path that I wanted to talk about tonight on the panel. And John Decker, I'm going to come back to you, and I want to sort of leave this thought with you, and then I want you to sort of, unpack it a little bit. When you look at the world golf rankings, what's interesting is they don't recognize the number one ball striker. They recognize, to John Hughes' point, the number one player. Do you think, as a general rule, that the average golfer, spends more time trying to be the number one ball striker? And I don't mean literally in the sense, because obviously they're not playing on the tour, but in their minds that they're focusing to be the best ball striker as opposed to the best player. What are your thoughts on that?
I do believe that the average golfer spends more of their time on the driving range. Now with all the phones, they have video. They can video their swings. They want to look like what they see on television. They want to look good on the first tee. They don't want to embarrass themselves, and they feel like that. Well, I can chip and putt. I know how to do that, but I want to hit the 300-yard drives, and so they spend their time there. And unfortunately, that does not lead to lower scores. If hitting 5 irons or 6 irons or 7 irons on the driving range, I'm not saying that that's not beneficial, especially when you're learning, but that is makes up such a small part of what your score really is. I mean, the game is played from, inside 100 yards, 150 yards, 75%, 40% of your score is really on the greens. So, if you can play from 150 yards in and eliminate, knocking the ball out of bounds with your driver and, getting the ball somewhat in play, you're going to play relatively good golf and you're going to have fun and you're going to want to play. But standing there, it does you no good to just stand there and hit drivers or one club on the driving range over and over and over again. if you're not attacking where the 75% of your score comes from. And if people treated their golf games like they did their bank accounts, they would practice a lot different. So I always say, you make your money from the 75% in. So 75% of your bank account's here, and the 25% the other shots. And so I think it's just it's a great topic. I think there's a lot of tour players that fall into that trap. They get too wrapped up in making swing changes. To me, that was the one, fault that Tiger made. I thought he jumping around from coach to coach to coach to coach, 4 coaches in 15 years. How many times did you see Jack Nicklaus do that? He didn't need to. God gave him a great swing. He worked it and he played with it. So, getting back to the point though, I think that people definitely spend too much time focusing on their swing.
Well said. Just to add a thought to that about Jack Nicklaus, and I don't remember the coach's name, but he actually did make a change partway through his career, and that particular coach, John, you may know who I'm talking about, but and they got him to try to start drawing the ball more as opposed to hitting his traditional fade, and he actually ended up playing terrible on tour for that particular season, and actually reverted back to his old swing. So that sort of furthers your point, is that was not comfortable for him. It's not to say he could never hit a draw, but that was not the comfortable shot for him, and to try and change that player. Peter, it brings me to a question based on what John was just talking about. And again, let me just preface this a little bit. I'm not trying to say this as a criticism of the industry. I'm just trying to help listeners and help my fellow teacher professionals and coaches out there to understand that we have to really think about things in this day and age a lot differently than maybe what we might have at one point. But Peter, what I want to ask you is this: how do we change? What do we start doing differently to change the mindset of our golfers out there? Because I think for a long time they have been sort of beaten in with technique and that, and it's caused them a lot of frustration. And ultimately what we want them to do, obviously we want them to improve, but we want them to have fun. How do we change that mindset of today's golfer?
That's a very good question. I think it starts from what we're doing on a daily basis as just people that have immediate contact with golfers in our ecosystem, and especially our players, because they trust us. They've come to us and they've stayed with us because they trust us, and we have an opportunity to help them understand that simplicity is where consistency can come from. And I ask my players all the time, can you let it be this simple? Because we're searchers by nature. We're seekers. We're searchers. We're looking for not what's the next best thing, but maybe, and I say this to people all the time. I said, just because I said, we've really worked hard to get it boiled down to this one thing and this foundation for you, can you let it be this simple? And don't go out practicing and say, well, Peter said this, and maybe he meant this, and if I do this too, It's going to make it better. And we really have that conversation all the time. We really do have that conversation. And I think if the more people that can have that conversation, and the more that the media I really wish we could hit reset on YouTube content. That would be great. Just because, if anybody listening goes to YouTube and Google's golf tip, you're probably going to get about 43 million hits. Just about that.
Yeah.
And it's a resource. It's a very real resource, and it's very real that a lot of people are going to it. And there's not, I would say maybe 1% of that has anything to do with talking about mindset or the mental approach to anything. I could probably name a handful of, people in a golf and ecosystem that are talking about that at all. And it's something I talk about a lot with my players. It's one of the real four cornerstones of all of it. And the three of the four have a lot to do with mindset and emotion and all sorts of different things that have almost nothing to do with skill development. So, that's just my thought on it. And I think we're going in a better direction, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that's a great point, John. I'm referring to John Hughes. We're seeing, I think, a different approach, and I'm liking to see, and to go to Peter's point, with YouTube and things like that. We've talked about this, a dozen times at least on the show. People a lot of times they'll come to us and then they'll say, "Well, I saw this great video, and what are your thoughts here?" And we can go back and forth. But I want to say something to you, John, and I want to get your thought on this. And we were talking a few minutes ago about John Dicker had mentioned about going on the practice tee. I've always approached it from this way, and I want to get your thoughts, whether you agree, disagree, and you're well to disagree with me. But and I'm excluding beginning golfers because obviously that's where we're going to do the building blocks, the initial building blocks, teaching the basic fundamentals and that. I've always looked at the practice facility or the practice tee. I sort of rename it, if you will, a warm-up tee or a warm-up facility, because that's really what it's designed for. It's not really designed, again, excluding the beginning golfers. For most better golfers or your top golfers, it's a place to warm up to see what game I have today. What do you think about that? Is that maybe a better approach that for our students is to think of it as, instead of I got to go out there and I got to practice, I got to warm up my game. What do you think about that?
I'll embellish a thought by saying that if all you ever plan to do as a golfer from an improvement standpoint of view is try something out at that facility prior to playing, then it's a combination practice warm-up. If your intention is to improve your skills, you're going to commit some time. It serves a dual role. Before you go play, it is a warm-up. You have to get in touch with who you are mentally, physically, emotionally before you get out to play. It's why it's called a warm-up in any sport. But then after the fact is when you see the best players in the world utilize that same space, that same facility for practice.
Yep.
And it's very pinpointed. They just don't go out there and strike a lot of balls. I emphasize this with all my clients. If all you want to do is strike balls, you're out there with no purpose, go to a gym. You'll get it done faster. You'll be less painful in your arms and shoulders and hands from the reverberation of the shaft going through you. Go to the gym. You'll get it done faster. I'm a perfect example of that. When I lost some weight years ago, I got there faster and better by going to the gym. So, yeah, it is a warm-up area. But if your commitment is to improve your skill, it is a practice area, but you just can't go there with the thought that 75 reps or 150 reps is going to get it done. The best players in the world, the people who are trying to become the best players in the world, the people who are dreaming to become the best players in the world, and the people who aren't born yet or that are going to do the same will all utilize that facility in a very pinpointed, very disciplined way with goals, dead set, solid goals in mind. And every ball they strike, every pre-shot routine they go through, and every evaluation, every shot they go through has a purpose. And when you can split the purposes up the way you said, warm up to begin, practice at the end, but practice with a purpose, you get better utilization out of that facility.
Yeah, and just to further that point, if you go to any PGA Tour event or LPGA Tour event, doesn't matter, and you watch the best players in the world, they will go to the practice tee to warm up before their round for a few moments. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them will go after the round, because really what they're doing pre-round is they're looking to see, okay, how am I hitting the ball? what's going to work today, what's not going to work today, and they'll make adjustments accordingly before they step out in the golf course. But after the round, post-round, that's, as you said, that's when they're doing their evaluations. That's when they're saying, okay, this is how this held up today. This didn't hold up so good. I'm going to fine-tune, or I'm going to make some adjustments, or I'm going to find out why this was happening today, why I wasn't putting well. And they'll work those tweaks out. They don't do it before a round because they don't want to, and I hate to use this term, they don't want to jinx the round by trying to make adjustments pre-round like that, unless it's something very, very minor, because that could be detrimental to that particular round. So great point, John. Thank you for bringing that up. Well, guys, believe it or not, we're out of time. That was actually a pretty fast discussion. That was a fast hour, at least from my standpoint. I want to thank you guys, as always, for coming on the show, and I appreciate you giving of your time. And I'm going to go in the same order: John Decker, Peter, and then John Hughes. Let the folks know if where they can reach out, and if there's anything special that you want to announce.
Yes, again, Ted, thank you very much for having me on the show. And Peter and John, I've enjoyed it and learned a lot by listening to you. You can, the listeners out there can follow me on Facebook at John Decker Golf Instruction, and I'm spelling my first name Jon. I'm also on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and also I'm on golfswing.com/John Decker. I've got about 300 videos on that website. I'm excited to announce that next Tuesday I'm going to be launching a podcast with Dr. Angelica Napolitano. She's a doctor of physical therapy, and we've already taped the show. We talked a lot about the Masters and Tiger, and so she does more of the aches and pains of what Tiger Woods has gone through, and I do more of the swing stuff. So I'm excited for that, and hopefully, Ted, we'll have you on the show sometime as well. And then my book is available on Golf Is My Life: Glorifying God Through the Game. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And I'll be speaking in Southern Pines on May the 1st and in Benson, North Carolina on May the 2nd. If you live in North Carolina, I'd love to see you. But thanks again, Ted.
I appreciate it, John, always. Peter, where can the folks, best way to reach you, and anything specific that you might want to let the listeners know about?
Yeah, again, thanks, Ted. Thanks, guys. Always learn a lot. People can reach me at primarily Instagram is the best. It's at at daily.golfcoach. And they can download the Go Golf Coach app on either the Google Play Store or Apple, and enjoy the mobile coaching experience with myself. So, again, my website is gogolfcoach.com, and please reach out if I can help. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Appreciate it, Peter. Thank you again for joining us tonight. And last but not least, John Hughes, best way that the folks can reach you, and anything you got coming up that you want to announce.
Sure. Peter, John, always a pleasure. Peter, great connecting with you. We tend to be on these quite a bit together. It's always fun to hear hear some things from you. I always learn something from you, John. Definitely hear a lot of Fred Griffin in you, and he's one of my best friends in the world here in Orlando, and I certainly want to say thanks to you both. People can reach me. It's really simple. I worked hard at this early. John Hughes Golf, whether it's .com, at John Hughes Golf, Facebook, John Hughes Golf. Type that in. That's where you're going to find me. I'm at Falcons Fire Golf Club in Kissimmee all year long. I'm also at Stream Song Resort doing special programs there. Nothing new other than everybody's getting into their season, and I've seen everybody get into their season. I'm winding down a little bit. Some more projects on the way as the summer goes on. And last but not least, Ted, thanks for your patience last week. I know I was scheduled last week and had some client situations occur. It's always great to be on here, and you've been a very much an inspiration over the past 3 or 4 months in particular, in trying to help me out with some questions I had concerning podcasts and the like. And by the end of the year, maybe some of those things will be shaping up. But I just want to say thanks.
Well, I appreciate it, John, and guys, always, as I said. And, John, not a problem. We always manage to work things out on the show. And as I've said many, many times, your teaching and helping your students always comes first. The show comes second. So not a problem, and I know you'll always make it up down the road. So I appreciate it, guys. Glad you were able to come this week, John. And John Decker, Peter Agazarian, and John Hughes, thank you very much, as always, for bringing your best to the Coaches Corner panel. It's been a fun discussion tonight, and we'll see what Tigers does for the rest of the season. He's already racked up one Masters, one major this season. We'll see if he's going to go for the Slam. But thanks, guys. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks, Ted.
All right. Good night, guys. All right. That was the Coaches Corner panel. Again, John Decker, Peter Agazarian, and John Hughes, and always bringing their best. And before I bring on my special guest tonight, just another quick word from tonight's Coaches Corner sponsor, golfswing.com.
Are you finally ready to improve your golf game? Golfswing.com is changing the way golfers learn online. With the largest collection of golf training programs and drills on the planet, Golfswing.com can help you improve every part of your game. Whether you want to gain more distance, hit it closer, or just sink more putts, Golfswing.com's staff of world-class coaches can help you gain the results you need. Watch unlimited videos on any device from anywhere in the world and start playing better, scoring lower, having more fun, and saving money. Get your fix on demand at golfswing.com.
All right, and once again, thank you to the sponsor of the Coaches Corner panel, golfswing.com. All right, I got a very special guest tonight. He's actually been on the show. I think it's been a few years since he's been on, but always enjoyed having him on the last time, and I'm looking forward to catching up with him this time. And, of course, I'm talking about Joshua Jacobs, the founder and CEO of TGA Premier Sports. I'll bring him out here in just a second, but let me just tell you a little bit about him. So for those of you that didn't tune in the last time he was on, give you an idea a little bit about his background. Joshua founded TGA Premier Golf in 2003 in 12 of the Los Angeles elementary schools, creating the first after-school golf enrichment curriculum of its kind. In 2006, the demand grew for his programs, and he scaled the model and launched his first ever youth sports franchise company that specialized in golf. Today, TGA delivers introductory after-school golf enrichment programs, camps, parent-child events, and leagues at 3,400 locations nationwide. He was named by Golf Magazine as one of the top 40 most influential people in golf under 40, and was recognized as one of golf's innovators by Golf Inc. He served on PGA of America national boards, the Southern California PGA's Foundation Advisory Board, and the Player Development Board, the World Golf Foundation Advisory Board, and the USTA's National Schools Committee. Lots of other great things, but I want to bring him out here and get into tonight's discussion. So please welcome my very special guest, Joshua Jacobs. Good evening, Joshua.
Good evening. Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well. As I'm sure you heard, I was just mentioning that you were on a few years ago. I think it was about 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, and we talked about a little bit about your business model and that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that again. I know you've got some other things that are happening as well, but I appreciate you coming back on and taking some time with me.
No, thanks. Thanks for having me. Always good to be back. I believe it was about 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was about might have been 4 years ago, but it's been a little while. And our good mutual friend Kevin Frisch, when he reached out and presented the opportunity to have you come back on again, I took him up on it very, very promptly. So, but I appreciate Joshua as always. Let me just read something out, and then I want to ask you, obviously, again about the franchise model. TGA Premier Golf is the only youth sports franchise program dedicated to the sport of golf and the leading delivery system for introductory and recreational youth golf programs in communities nationwide, with over 750,000 participants to date. That's an incredible number. Really, for any organization to boast, especially in this day and age with so much competition out there. How did you come up with the franchise model, and why do you think it works so well?
Well, I think back in the day when I started this, there was a real void for introductory programs in golf, and I think that there were underserviced demographics, and as we all know, less than 3% of America plays golf. So it doesn't matter whether you're in the lower income or the upper echelon income. The opportunity to grow the sport exists throughout. And so we noticed there was a void, but we also noticed entrepreneurial activity in that introductory space, going to locations that had families that otherwise didn't play golf. And in order to do that, you needed to bring the sport to them to initially gain their interest. And so we created this model. We created this model, as you kind of read off, that starts in the schools. It's an after-school program, and we do a little bit of PE programs because the schools ask us to do them as well to garner more interest in the after-school programs. But 70% of our kids have never played before. The model starts in the schools. We bring all the equipment. All they need to do is bring, closed-toed tennis shoes, and we have equipment sized right for these kids. We have props. We have targets. They learn everything from putting to full swing. It doesn't matter whether it's indoors or outdoors. And the model took shape there in the introductory level, and then we transitioned these kids to recreational programs, camps, parent-child events, now family events, and then we really turn them loose in the golf world for the PGA and LPGA professionals to really create the avid golfers.
Yeah, and what I like, and I remember this from our discussion the last time, and again, not to knock some of these other great programs that are out there, like the PGA Junior League and others like that, but they tend to be more, and I think we talked about this, almost like feeders for the tours, if you will. They're more technical driven as far as the golf swing and things like that, and they can be very, in certain circumstances, can be very high pressure for a lot of the kids. And we hear about this in the industry a lot of times. The kids get so pressured into performing that they're not really having fun anymore, and the parents get a little bit too assertive or aggressive with it as well, because they want to see their child win the Masters when they grow up, like Tiger did this past week. So I like your approach to this, and I want to ask you something. Back to the schools here, as I mentioned earlier on, you're in 3,400 schools now, and you've really developed a unique curriculum incorporating what you call the STEAM labs with golf. How does the curriculum work, and how have the schools responded to it?
So the curriculum is a station-based activity learning system where the kids are never standing in line. There's different stations that they go through on a daily basis, whether it's rules and etiquette, chipping, putting, and then as you mentioned, we also have academic stations with it. So there's a standard class outline that we always follow. The kids start the class by shaking hands. They then go into the instruction for the day along with stretching and exercise. Once they do that, they enter the station-based activities where one of those stations is academic, and we often incorporate STEAM labs with them: science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Almost Bryson DeChambeau-esque.
Oh, wow.
But a little bit dumbed down, if you will. But
right.
Yeah. So we do that, and then and we also have our student handbooks that every kid and family receives that goes through the program. So there's a lot of great information there on the sport in general, as well as our programs. We then have a game of some sort to, as you said, make it fun. And then finally we end with the Achieve section of our website. Our curriculum kind of goes in the Teach, Grow, Achieve, those sections very much like TGA. But getting back to your point, I'd like before that, I really believe that the golf industry is trending towards less pressure. I think what the golf industry does is we do a great job with competitive golf, especially at the junior level. There are so many tours. Obviously, AJGA does a wonderful job, Steve Hamblin and his team. But what you did specifically mention, PGA Junior League Golf, and I'll tell you, Steve Tanner at the PGA of America and his team there have done an incredible job growing that league, honing that model, and really making it so it's inclusive, where it's fun. There actually is less pressure, I think, in the scramble format and in the team format. The parents seem to really take to it. Yes, of course, there's a national championship. You kind of need that carrot, but they're really driving recreational leagues now throughout the United States. I see that as having a big opportunity to impact junior golf moving forward.
Yeah, and let me just preface this. Let me just correct myself a little bit. Yeah, I didn't mean to suggest, so for you listening out there, that there was anything wrong or they were part of the problem of the PGA Junior League. I just was a reference as just naming somebody that came off the top of my head. So I don't want to suggest that their model or their program is not certainly working out in the best interest of the kids that are involved. So I just want to clarify that. But my point was that, for a long time, and when you and I talked the last time, this was some part of our discussion, was that there really was a more of a high-pressured approach. And I think the industry has started to recognize, just by the fact that people were dropping out. It was just too difficult. They just felt like they weren't really enjoying themselves. And especially when you're dealing with kids, if they're not, if they feel like they're being pushed or prodded too aggressively in a direction, they're going to resist and they're going to back off. And I think the industry as a whole has started to recognize that, as you suggest. And something I want to pick up on that you mentioned, and I want you to explain a little bit if this is something, since you first started your programs, if this is something that you did from day one, or is this something that you trended to do differently? But you mentioned about having the various stations so that people aren't, the kids aren't just sort of standing around. As well as I do, I remember when I was a kid in school, if you were standing around for any length of time, you're very impatient. You want to be in the activity. Did you find, was that something that you did early on, that you recognized that, hey, we need to keep the kids active and moving and doing things, and if they're standing in line, 10 deep, the first 3 are kind of excited because they're going to be next, but the other 6 or 7 are going to get bored because they're standing around doing nothing. Is that something that you recognized right away, that you needed to make sure that you had those stations available, or was that something that sort of transitioned as you went along, as you sort of went through the learning curve?
That's a great question. You learn a lot about business. We've been doing it, more than 15 years now, and we always like to take our consumer feedback and run with it. And you're 100% correct. We did not start out that way. In fact, we had
Right.
people in lines, and the parents were saying, "Hey, look, this is a great program. I love that you're making golf available to everyone, but my kid just went through an hour program and hit 5 shots. Thanks for the rules
Right.
etiquette lesson, but we want them to get more repetition, and I think that'll lead to more fun."
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. We made that transition to station-based curriculum, and then eventually, about a year and a half in, we realized that to really accelerate the growth and increase the participation in the program, we incorporated academics into it, and which looked great for the schools. We became an extension of the classroom, but the parents also then tend to migrate more to our program. Back to what you were saying before, you're 100% correct. Unfortunately, in the youth sports world, parents and kids have really gravitated towards this early sport specialization. There's a great article in Time
Right.
magazine about it, and there's no different in the golf world, and it's kind of twofold, right? So the first fold is there's
Right.
a ton of money in competitive golf. I mean, the amount of money that you can now make playing golf is at professional level, besides just the purses alone, the endorsements, et cetera. So that carrot is huge, let alone the ability
Right.
to get college scholarships. So that saves the parents. So parents, yeah, they have gotten, it has gotten away from them a little bit. It's no longer you're dropping your kid off at the course for a full day and picking them up as the sun sets. It's rigorous training, especially in high school,
Yeah.
both fitness as well as the golf, and there definitely is an opportunity for the golf industry to decide, okay, are we going to concentrate and put all the sexiness, continue that in the competitive aspect of the game, or are we looking to increase participation, avid golfers that really helps all facets of the industry, manufacturers, media, everybody does better when there's more players and higher participation and more rounds being played. So I think it's going to be an interesting topic of conversation over the next 2 to 3 years. I mean, Tiger winning the Masters and coming back the way he did, I knew you were talking about that before. He definitely put
Right.
the limelight on our sport. There's no doubt. So I think the myth that happened a decade and a half ago with Tiger was he came on the scene and everybody said, it was more than a decade, I think it was 20 years ago, but he came on the scene and everyone said, this is going to grow the sport. Oh, it's going to be amazing, huge opportunity. And there was a huge opportunity. What Tiger does is increase the demand for the sport. It increases our ability to activate consumers. But what the industry is looking at, I think, is do we have the infrastructure to accommodate that demand? Can we create the supply? If you had a golf course and all of a sudden the next day 150 people showed up at the gates and said, we want to play golf, we've never played golf before, what does that golf course do? And I'm not sure that we're ready for that kind of influx. So I think there needs to be some infrastructure build. You've got, Mike O'Donnell, the PGA America, who's working on PGA Reach and increasing the value of the PGA professional for the consumer and the coaching level. So I think we're getting there. We may not be there yet. So hopefully Tiger sticks around for 3 to 5 more years.
Well, he's 43 now, so he's getting up there. Joshua, something that really raises an interesting point. And you're exactly right. When Tiger first sort of came on the scene, it was actually 97 when he made his 97 when he made his official introductory into the golfing world. And he did bring a lot of attention to the game. And what was kind of interesting, not on this show here, but I do another show Tuesday mornings called The Women of Golf, and with my friend and co-host LPGA professional Cindy Miller. And we have the honor of interviewing many of the young up-and-coming women on the Symetra Tour, which, of course, is the feeder tour into the LPGA. And what's interesting is when I asked, and, of course, they range from, 19 to mid-20s. And what was kind of interesting, we asked them one day, who was sort of their hero. And I had 3 of them on at one time, sort of a special panel. And what was interesting is not one of them mentioned a female golfer. They all mentioned Tiger Woods as somebody they really looked up to and admired as far as a golfer. So you would have, obviously they're a little young to understand who Nancy Lopez and that. And they certainly don't know who the original founders of the LPGA. They don't have that information. But it goes to your point is that he had a lot of influence on attracting people to the game. The one thing that I noticed, and then I want to get back into your model here, is unfortunately he attracted a lot of people, but many of those that he attracted did not have the resources to be able to really enjoy it. In fact, since Tiger Woods, I can't think of one African American golfer who is out on tour. There are certainly other minority golfers out there, but so if you look at it from that standpoint, there were a lot of minorities that were very, very attracted, but once they got out there and realized how expensive golf can be and how unattainable it is, or out of reach, if you will, for them, they quickly got turned off. So the industry, you're right, I think the industry partners need to play a bigger role in making it more accessible so that those that aren't in the upper echelon or higher income level brackets can have an opportunity to go out and battle it out in the golf course, if you will. And obviously programs like you give them. And I want to ask you that. How does your TGA player pathway work, and how is it impacting golf courses and the industry as a whole?
Again, a great question. So the player pathway, if you look at the industry, whether you're teaching juniors or you're teaching adults, there's really 3 levels to the pyramid: introductory, recreational, and competitive golf. And we are that base of the pyramid. I think it's probably the one when it comes to growing participation and creating avid golfers. It's really the place that the industry needs to kind of morph a little bit in terms of getting more people who don't play to the sport. Once we get them to the sport, we actually do a pretty good job of keeping them in the sport. But getting them to the sport is difficult. So our pathway is schools. Kids bond to people, and they don't bond to programs. So it's important for us to make sure we have great coaches, and our coaches are all walks of life. They're PGA, they're all PGA professionals, they're senior retired people.
Right.
they are students in college, they're high school golfers. It's all the above. And so we make the program fun. We make it so the kids bond with the coaches, and then the parents, from a business standpoint, the parents bond to brands. And if we're, like I said, we got about 70% of our kids and our families who have never played golf before. So when you provide a fun program for a kid, you give them the opportunity to achieve, the parents are going to come with you, and they're going to say, okay, what's next? And that's where we partner with, and we say, all right, we're in 30 or 40 schools in this area. We've got a database of 4,000 to 5,000 people. How can we partner to make this a win-win situation? And they say, great, what kind of programs do you want to run? And we talk about camps and family events, parent-child events, et cetera. And we partner with them that way, and that's your transition to the golf course. After that,
right,
if we are not going to make the competitive golfer. We're not going to make the Tiger Woods. And that we really want to leave to the experts. Those are the PGA and LPGA professionals, the high-level teachers, and the golf courses providing them excellent facilities to be able to hone their skills. As you said, Tiger is the one. He really is the one who moves that needle. There really isn't another golfer that's been able to do that since him, both male or female. It's both a blessing and a curse for our industry. And this everyone's calling it Tiger 2.0. It's going to be real interesting to see where it goes. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely going to be a lot of buzz, and there already is. Obviously, the media is eating it up since his win at the Masters this past weekend. But it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season goes for him. And I think if it goes well, which I believe it will, I think he's I don't like to use the word he's back, but I think that, he's refreshed. He's healthier now. His back is in much better shape, and knee and so forth. So I think he's a healthier Tiger now. And I think he's always had the game in his head, but unfortunately, as we all get a little bit older, our body doesn't always seem to cooperate sometimes. So, but now that he's gotten himself back in shape, I think we're going to see some great things. And I think this win at the Masters is going to help propel that forward. So we'll see what happens, but I'm certainly rooting for him. Let me ask you something, and I don't know what kind of. Yeah, I think a lot of people are. I think a lot of people have really been pulling for him. Joshua, let me ask you, just sort of piggybacking on what we were just talking about with changes in the industry and how it's impacting and that. Are you getting any sort of stats? Now, obviously, you have your after-school program, so it's mixed, it's boys and girls, but are you seeing an increased trend with young girls particularly? And the reason why I ask this is if you look at the industry stats, over a third of all new golfers are young females getting into the sport. And it's really grown exponentially over the last several years, despite numbers overall have gone down a little bit, but yet new golfers coming in. Are you seeing, and have you kept any sort of stats to see, to sort of support that, where you're seeing a lot of new young ladies taking an interest in getting involved in golf through your camps and so forth?
Absolutely. About 5 years ago, we were at 70% male, 30% female. And to date, we are 61% male, 39% female. So we are seeing that trend. Absolutely. Yep. I think the NGF actually released their numbers today that girls golf, or the girls that play golf, the girls juniors, I think it's up 300% or something in the past 3 to 4 years. Wow. But with us, we're seeing more girls participate. We're also running as an organization. TGA is running LPGA, USGA girls golf programs. Another great initiative. Girls do want to, especially with introductory programs, they want to play with other girls. The parents feel more comfortable. The kids feel more comfortable. It's a great initiative. It's a great opportunity for anyone who's out there who wants to create programs at a facility or in the community to be able to bring programs that are just for girls. When you mentioned before about the initiatives that really did not take into account the cost of getting these kids to a high level place. Golf is an expensive sport. It's not like tennis, where you had the Williams sisters out of, I believe they were out of Compton, California, where you just need a racket and some balls and some tennis shoes, and you can train to be a professional tennis player. It doesn't really work like that with golf.
No.
So there are a lot of initiatives out there. I think we all do a great job of filling a void in a certain area. Obviously, the other big one, the junior programs, is the First Tee, and we are extremely complimentary to their programs. They run more PE programs, and they have an amazing national school program. We do the after school component. Their facilities are mainly in more lower income areas where there is an absolute void for the sport, and they fill that void, and they do it really well. With us, we concentrate more on the middle to upper income areas, but we also have a 501c3. We also have a 501c3 foundation that goes with our programs. So any kid who wants to participate in our programs who otherwise couldn't afford it, we have to get them. All of our franchises engage with more of our upper income families, and we've had great success with them giving back to our programs in the sport. It's definitely a problem that we've got to come together as an industry, but it's also tremendous resources. I mean, I would venture to guess it's probably 7 to 10 times more expensive to create a professional out of a more under-resourced area than it is for tennis. And where are those resources going to come from? But I certainly agree with you. We need more diversity and inclusion throughout the industry, and it wouldn't be a bad thing to see it on tour.
No, I would like, for one, Joshua, to see some of the industry leaders in the equipment side, particularly, instead of spending a lot of the funds on research and development of new technology for golf equipment. I mean, I don't think you're going to get a driver or what have you that's going to hit the ball much further than what they are now. Or same with the golf ball. And I mean, the measurements are insurmountable. I'd love to see that money going towards good programs and into some sort of a foundation to allow accessibility to those that might not have it. Because I think, and I'm sure as you've seen, once you get kids out there and playing and introducing them to golf, they get very, very excited about it. They like the challenge, they love the game, and they can become very creative. And then where it takes them beyond that, obviously is up to them. But just getting them to that first stage is critical. And I'd like to see some of the big companies get out there and allocate some more. I know they are doing some now, but I'd like to see them do more. I saw a very interesting stat. What? Sorry, go ahead.
Let me just interject. I wouldn't mind either. I think it's a obviously it helps TGA, it helps golf, but I think it's difficult, especially with the major manufacturers, because the big ones are publicly traded companies, and so they are, and for good reason, right? They're shareholders. We understand that, but they're really focused on selling the drivers every year and the high-end sets of irons, and making sure their marketing teams get their brand in front of as many people as they can and keep them playing their brand. What I would like to see from the manufacturers is thinking more long-term on customer acquisition rather than just short-term, which then I think that would change the mindset of people who are growing the sport from an introductory level, and then you can look to keep people in that brand for 3 to 10 years, maximize that, but you also get the opportunity to activate their parents when you get the kids. So it's definitely a conundrum. It's definitely a conundrum for the manufacturers.
Well, and it's not impossible to do, and I don't want to, belabor the point because we got other things to talk about here. But, Nike years ago, when they were recruiting basketball, I mean, they got very heavily involved in financing and funding schools and things like that in order to recruit athletes. And obviously there was a method to their madness. They wanted to get the cream of the crop. But, they were willing to do that. And I think the golf industry needs to do more of that as well. And they can open up other divisions within their company, to avoid some of the issues that you mentioned. But that's something that they're going to have to work out. But I would like to see them get more actively involved at an introductory level and not just selling you and I a new piece of equipment every year. Something interesting here that I was reading. You quote here that 70% of the TGA participants and their parents have never played golf before trying TGA, and this is really bringing obviously the millennials into the sport, and obviously how are you able to attract, because this new generation that's coming out now, the millennials and others, they weren't exposed to golf the same way that maybe you and I were, particularly me. I think I'm a little bit older than you, but and it's not in the common core at the schools right now as other sports are. So how are you finding the response with that group particular, and obviously some of the younger parents? What's been some of the feedback there?
Another great question. When it comes to growing the sport, there's different age groups and there's different ways to activate the demand of those age groups. And even in the millennial category, I think there's multiple groups within that category. The first one is the more single people, correct? So we've got the Top Golf, the Drive Shacks, all of those off course opportunities for those millennials. And then you obviously have the millennials that have children. So it's a little bit different from a time function, as well as how do you attract them. Our program, it's interesting. I've always thought of it as you have to get the parents in order to activate the kids, whereas in our case, it kind of works backwards. What we found is if you hook the kid through the school programs, the parents, if they don't play, which is the majority of our participants, they want to start playing. And it's a time function. The kid sees the opportunity, they get hooked. The parent realizes, well, if they're going to play golf, that's pretty time consuming. Maybe I'll play it with them. And golf is an amazing family opportunity. The ability to play golf together, those experiences are priceless, as we all know. But you really have to educate the parents who don't play. And then we also have the parents who do play, whose kids start playing, and then they just want to play more. So for us, it's kind of a backdoor entry into that market, that segment. So we simply do it by running great programs, and which opens the line of communication to the parents, and then offering programs that fit what their needs are. And once we do that, it gives us a great opportunity to activate that entire family. That's kind of the way we do it. It's not rocket science, but creating the programs and creating the availability of bringing golf to the masses, that's really the challenging part. Once you do that, you've got the communication touch points, and then it's just give the people what they want.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about what you were just talking about is you're exactly right. When the kids show an interest in something, now obviously there are exceptions to the rule, but some other sports. Now, if the parents are a little bit younger, it's not as big of an issue. But if you've got parents that are maybe a little bit older, if their kids are still young enough that they're in school and they're getting involved in some activities, some of those activities the parents are maybe, it's not saying they can't participate, but it's they're not as young anymore. And that the one great thing about golf is you can play it really until you're well up into your 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s. So it's not as restrictive as other sports. So if their kids or grandkids are getting involved, this is a great way for them to stay involved with their kids. Unlike other sports, if they're playing basketball or something, that may be one thing. But even tennis. I mean, tennis can be a little bit more impact than golf. There comes a point in time where they're not doing that anymore, or running, or whatever the case is. So you're exactly right. Getting these kids at a very early age actively involved will sometimes draw the parents into that fold as well, and I think that's a great approach. Something else too that's very interesting. I know you probably want to talk a little bit about is you recently completed a $750,000 infrastructure investment to sort of streamline operations, if you will, in order to help grow golf a little bit more efficiently. How do you think this is going to position you guys for future business, and also how do you think it's going to help to impact the industry?
I think it's going to position us for the future in the fact that we're going to be able to grow quicker, and it's going to make it. We're going to be able to grow quicker in two fronts. Number one, growing our number of franchises quicker, just due to the business efficiency that we've created, which allows franchises to get more people into their programs quicker, as well as have a higher profit margin. I mean, the people who buy our business, they're entrepreneurs. They got to put food on the table, and the best part about what we've created is the amount of money you make, the amount of food that you're putting on the table is all based on how much you grow the sport in terms of participation. The more kids that sign up.
Right.
If you think about what the business is on a very basic level, it's an event management company. We just happen to have very unique events for the golf world. So we've streamlined marketing. We've made it easier for our franchises. We've made it easier for them to spend less time marketing and put the brunt of it on our headquarters team. We have, from a curriculum standpoint, we've made it easier to train coaches, so onboarding is quicker and less cumbersome and less expensive, so we can get more coaches into the fold. More coaches mean more programs we can run and more kids that we can service. And then from an operations standpoint, we've made it so that our back-end CRM, CMS system really it just pushes out information for the franchises. So it's less cumbersome, less time to operate the business, and they can spend more time growing it. The impact on the industry, I think we've got a great opportunity to impact golf facilities in the areas that we service. Those are really going to be the ones that we have the opportunity to impact immediately locally, because the more people who get into the game, into the sport, the more people who we hook, they're going to have to go to the golf course. They're going to want to go to the golf course, and we're going to help their operations. We're going to get them more F&B and more tee times, more equipment sales. Mm-hmm. So it's not rocket science, right? The more people who play golf, the better off the industry is. And it really impacts everyone. So we definitely need more scale and replicable programs. Along the lines of what you were saying about tennis versus golf and how golf, the whole family, golf is the only sport that you can play, that you can have multiple generations playing at one time together. Yep. It's the only sport. Yep. Sure, you can shoot baskets, with a father, son, and grandfather, or a daughter, mother, and grandmother. You can certainly shoot baskets, but you're probably not going to, unless it's in an abnormal case, you're probably not going to be playing a 5-on-5 game or a 3-on-3 game in half court. Right. Your golf, you can go out there and you can play, you can compete, you can enjoy, you can play recreationally, but you can get the entire family together. I think you're going to hear more about some initiatives that are going to come out on that. I think capturing the entire family, that is where the economy is headed. That is where people's priorities are headed. They want more together time. They want more fun time. And golf can be one of the solutions to an opportunity that the industry can take.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think you're exactly right, and I've believed this for a long time as well. I think that, as the family dynamics have changed and are continuing to develop and change, I think that, parents, whether it be both parents or single mothers as an example, are looking for ways to stay engaged with their kids. They're trying to find, obviously, other things besides social media to keep them occupied. And I think that, golf is a great way. They're outdoors, they can enjoy some nice weather and spend some good quality. It's not just, a 30-minute stint. They can go out even if they just played 9 holes. It's pretty much assured, a couple of hours of good quality time, and they can have some fun and a few laughs and whatever. So I agree wholeheartedly with that. As we get close to wrapping things up, I want to give you an opportunity, obviously, just maybe to touch a little bit more about the foundation side of it, and then also franchising opportunities. How do people go about getting more information, and what opportunities are available?
Absolutely. Appreciate that. We created a 501c3 nonprofit charitable foundation to go with the programs. We we knew that, especially in a for-profit, the majority of the programs, majority of the companies in the golf industry are for-profit, but we realized very quickly that even in the wealthiest schools and areas, that there were still under-resourced students, Title I schools, Title I wide schools,
right.
And we wanted to provide that opportunity for any student to be able to experience golf and our program. So we created a 501c3 foundation. We've had some great donors to it. The HB Foundation out of Palm Springs area, Ross Kavingi and his group have done amazing things for us and given us the ability to give back. So we realized that we had an opportunity to be able to hit every demographic in a geographic community, and that was important because the first tee was created really to impact the under-resourced. But as we talked about very early on, that doesn't mean that everyone in middle to the upper income are playing. Less than 3% of America plays golf, so we want to make sure that anyone who wants to play can. So that's why we created the foundation. It's really given us an opportunity to give back. And then in regards to the franchising, if you're an entrepreneur, if you've got a type A personality, if you've got a passion for golf or other sports, TGA does do 7 other sports. It's not just golf, but there are dedicated businesses for just golf if that's what you're interested in. PlayTGA.com. You can see all the information on the programs. You can get information on the franchising. It's not a very expensive proposition. We've made it so almost anyone can get in. You can spend less than $10,000 and get a franchise. Our franchises are seeing great success. We like to say that you're going to get out of it what you put in, and that's not just from your heart in growing the sport, but it's also in terms of the amount of money that you're going to make and the ROI that you're going to get on your business. It's a lifestyle business. We treat every franchise as a family. You can quote me on that. You can call any of the franchises.
Yeah.
It's really fun to be a part of. It's fun to be a part of on the ground level of youth sports, and really we are impacting these kids' lives and really paving the way for the future, because everybody remembers the first time they played a sport. Everybody remembers how you got into it, who got you into it, what the situation was, and that's what we concentrate on. And so having that positive experience, we thank the industry all the time, because if they don't have a good experience in our programs, and if we didn't have industry support, a lot of golfers wouldn't become golfers, because they'd have a negative experience and they'd probably not pick up a club again, because in this day and age, there are a million different activities that kids and families can do. So we always thank the industry for their support. Our franchises are fantastic. Mold our program and understanding that no two communities are the same in regards to growing the sport. Everything is different in communities, whether it's weather-based, whether it's school-based, whether it's facility-based, the golf courses, and it's really wonderful to be a part of.
Yeah, and it creates a little different model too, from traditional teaching. Most of your pros out there, are working at a club or a facility of some sort, giving golf lessons, which is fine. But you have a lot of other things in your curriculum that are different. So it's kind of a unique situation for the professionals out there that are interested in getting involved with it. It's not just your traditional, like I said, one-on-one golf lessons. They're having an opportunity to grow and develop an industry, and that's something that a lot of them are passionate about, and so it gives them something different than what your traditional golf professional might view, and I like that. One other thing that I was going to ask you, and actually I was interested in your response, and I lost my train of thought, which doesn't happen too often, but I know what I was going to ask you. What principal markets are you in now? Like, I know obviously you've expanded since we talked the last time. How many states are you in right now? And are you looking at, is there certain markets that you're finding are more receptive to it, or you're looking to grow into other markets?
Well, given we have the ability to teach year-round, and the program that we created, especially at the introductory level in the schools, community centers, churches, temples, we really bring the program anywhere. There's no limit to what we can do in terms of the geography. Right now, we're in 29 different states. I would say the one area Where we haven't had traction yet is the Midwest. It's certainly on our radar to push further. We have tremendous growth in the Northwest, in the Southern California and Northern California area. We kind of make a U around the United States if you look at it that way. But there's still even then a ton of opportunity in those geographies to be able to get a franchise if you're interested. The franchises just happen to be concentrated in that area.
So you're basically, obviously in a lot of the traditional golf markets right now, and you want to get into areas that maybe might not, like you said, the Midwest and things like that. That not that there aren't golf courses, not golf facilities, but it's not your traditional golf markets. I mean, obviously Florida and California and certain areas, Myrtle Beach, that sort of area, are your more traditional golf markets. No, I think that's fantastic. I mean, 29 states, that's pretty impressive. We're more than halfway there. And because you can not only do, outside, but you can also do inside facilities as well. You can get into the Northeast and other areas fairly easily, not having to worry about climate issues and things like that as much. But obviously, primarily areas like California, because it is a year-round climate, it's obviously, and same with Florida, is a little bit more advantageous. But well, Joshua, I want to thank you for joining me. It's been an interesting discussion, and I'm glad to see that TGA is doing such a great job. And as you mentioned, it's not just golf. You have a variety of other sports that the franchisees can certainly become involved with, but golf is certainly one of them, and you've made some great strides since we last spoke, and I want to wish you all continued success, and I'd love to have you come back anytime. Anytime you've got something that you want to share, just reach out and let me know.
Well, I certainly do appreciate that, and thanks for mentioning the other sports. Yeah, we're not Amazon by any means. But we kind of look at what they did. They started out with books, and what they realized is that they had a distribution platform. And what we came to realize about 4 or 5 years ago was that what we had created was an infrastructure and a model that could, if you put it in those terms, distribute youth sports programs. And that's why we decided to branch out. We branched out to tennis with the United States Tennis Association back in the day, and then we added 6 more sports. So we've really created a business opportunity where people can, depending on what their passion is, they can really tailor, here's a golf term, they can really tailor-made their situation with our business based on what their passions are and the sports that they, maybe even that they've played growing up or that they identify with in today's day and age.
Well, and the other thing, it affords you an opportunity for crossover as well. If you get somebody that's, maybe gets involved in the tennis and say, they also have a golf program, and vice versa, it gives you a sort of like a restaurant, a bigger menu to look at as a potential consumer or customer that's interested in getting involved in the programs. And it's great for kids. It has other activities, and it's also great for the as I said, for the franchisees. So I think that was a very smart move on your part to branch out like that, because if obviously I love golf and everything about golf, but I think in your particular case, you developed a platform that was able to serve many markets besides golf, and I think that was a smart move, because you're ultimately, again, you're going to get some crossover either way. So I think that's fantastic. Well, Joshua, again, I want to thank you very much for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. It's been a lot of fun having you come back, and as I said, anytime that you want to come back, and maybe what we can do on a future show, if you're interested, is maybe we can get a couple of your franchisees that have been involved with TGA for a while to come on and talk about how they've seen their franchises grow, and talk about some of the things that maybe some ideas that they have to even make it more profitable for them.
That would be awesome, without a doubt.
Sounds good. Well, again, Joshua, thank you very much, and we'll keep a tiger watch and see what happens for the rest of the season. But much continued success with TGA. You've done a great job, and you've got a great business there, and much continued success. And until next time.
Thank you, sir. We'll talk soon.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, it was my very special guest, Joshua Jacobs, founder and CEO of TGA Premium Sports. And as he said, it's not just golf. There's other activities. Tennis is one of them. But it certainly has a great business model, and it's been expanding, and it's just done a fantastic job. Once again, I want to thank my gang, if you will, of three that were on earlier, John Hughes, Peter Agazarian, and John Decker from the Coaches Corner panel for joining me this week. Did a great job as always, and always enjoy my guest interviews as well. Don't forget to tune in next week. I've got another great panel, and we're going to talk about some more interesting things to help your golf game. Always trying to expand things a little bit. We're certainly more than happy to talk about some instructional side, but we want to talk about some other things as well. It's not always just about instruction. We want to make you think a little bit. So make sure you check out the Coaches Corner panel every Thursday with me here and the guys and gals here on Coaches Corner panel. And always tune into Golf Talk Live each and every week. Don't forget, next Tuesday, LPGA professional Cindy Miller and I will be back with another show that airs on Tuesday mornings from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern. And then join me next Thursday here on Golf Talk Live from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. On that note, God bless everybody. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to this evening's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. Remember to tune in each week at blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live. If you can't join us live, check out the on-demand section for previously aired broadcasts, or listen on any of the following social media platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, TalkStream Live, and of course Spotify. To get updates on future shows and upcoming guests, be sure to visit the show's Facebook page, Golf Talk Live Blog. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. Remember to join me live each week for another great broadcast of Golf Talk Live. See you next time. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.